Hi, everyone. Warm welcome to our Q2 2023 live webinar. My name is Dale Veron. I'm the CEO for Fortune Bay Corp and really excited to give you an update on the company and where we're headed here. If you do have any questions during this webinar, please just type them into your chat box and we'll be sure to get those answered at the end. So we'll get going here. I will be making forward-looking statements, so please do refer to these. They are available on our website and our corporate presentation. So for today's overview, I'm going to talk a bit about Goldfields, of course, our flagship asset in northern Saskatchewan, and just point to it's an undervalued asset and a tremendous development opportunity in Canada for open pit gold mining projects. I'm going to focus a little bit on Mexico today, our Ixhuatán asset. We haven't spoken about that project much before. It's an important pipeline asset for the company, and most recently we've been looking to advance that asset, including a recent visit to the project in May. So I'm looking forward to telling you a bit about that and the potential we see there and our plans for that project. We're not going to talk in any detail about our uranium projects today. They are still important assets. They're in good standing. They have tremendous potential. We'll cover those in our overview of plans, which is a wrap-up at the end of the webinar, just to give you an overview of where we're headed. And then, of course, finishing up with a Q&A. So just as an overview, Fortune Bay has an enviable global gold resource base for a junior company. That's just over 2.9 million ounces of gold across our two gold projects, Goldfields and Ixhuatán, and across the different categories. Shown also on that map is the Strike and Mermac uranium projects, which sit in proximity to the Goldfields project. Where Fortune Bay is trading at the moment, we are highly attractive. We have a highly attractive value, trading at a significant discount to peers, as shown on that top right chart. Now, peer average for open pit gold projects in Canada averages around $30 to $40 US per, around $30 US dollars per resource ounce. If we look at Goldfields only, so excluding Mexico, Fortune Bay has a value of around $5 US dollars an ounce. And on a global basis, when we include Mexico, that goes to around $2 an ounce. So certainly a really attractive valuation on assets that have good development potential. We've put our assets alongside the Lassonde curve. Some of you may know that maps the typical life cycle of a mining project over time and the value of that. And we see our projects at the moment. Obviously, we have our uranium projects that in earlier discovery stage. We've had some good initial results on those. Those are further down the curve. Mexico at Ixhuatán, we have had discovery there in the past through Campamento. That's a significant resource of 1.7 million ounces. But we put that somewhat low on that curve because we do see tremendous potential for that project to grow. And I'll elaborate on that a little later in the webinar. And then Goldfields at a development stage just completed a PEA and sitting really in that orphan period for projects before it gets de-risked further toward production, where it's possible to add significant value to the asset. So overall, we see tremendous growth in our story with very limited downside risk given the resources we have and the development potential of those, in particular Goldfields, which is more advanced at a PEA stage. So we're going to talk about Goldfields first, and we're advancing potential for Saskatchewan's next gold mine. Shown here in this picture, just that the historical box head frame and mill frame sitting right on top of that box deposit, which outcrops on surface. To the site, there's a power line, which is shown in this picture, and also a road just 13 kilometers from Uranium City with its infrastructure. So a very favorable situation for a development asset in Canada's top-ranked mining jurisdiction. Before we get into a sort of recap on Goldfields, just a few charts I wanted to share on the sort of macro gold picture and where equities, gold equities like ourselves sit within that picture. So the top right chart shows how the physical gold price is shown by an ETF it tracks against the junior gold miners. And for the most part, from 2015 onwards, we've seen juniors sort of follow the gold price quite well. And more recently, the juniors trading down relative to the gold price and at a significant discount. And that trend, really feel that is unsustainable. Juniors can't keep trading down or at such a big discount to the gold price, and sooner or later those are going to re-rate. The bigger funds, they've been buying into more physical gold and ETFs, and there hasn't been much trickle down into the gold miners or juniors yet. We've seen to some extent the gold miners start to move up in this environment, but it's yet to affect the juniors, and Fortune Bay is amongst those with a significantly attractive valuation. So we feel there's a good opportunity for re-rating in the coming months with some strong tailwinds for the gold price, backed by the macro picture of geopolitical risk, market slowdowns, interest rates being paused or certainly peaking, and obviously risks to valuations in the equity markets, as well as central bank buying. We look at the chart on the bottom right, that just shows a declining rate of discovery on a global basis for gold. The black line shows the global exploration budgets, and those have remained quite strong. But despite that, we've seen very little in the way of meaningful large discoveries to replenish the reserves that are being mined out on a global basis. What that's going to do in the longer term is going to force a lot of gold miners to look for projects, and they're going to look most certainly in favorable, lower risk jurisdictions like Canada for assets that can be developed. And we certainly have a favorable asset in that regard. Goldfields sitting in Saskatchewan, and with a lot of attributes that would attract larger companies, including the infrastructure, the fact that it's been environmentally screened before, and just the various development attributes, which I'll touch on. So just a quick recap of our PEA and the economics around that. This is just the sensitivities at various gold prices, and the base case was run at $1,650 an ounce. That produced a robust set of economics, including a NPV of 285 million and a IRR of 35% on an after-tax basis. What's more relevant today is where gold is at, and that's around 1950, and that is our upside case, where the project produces a after-tax NPV of 460 million, after-tax IRR of 50.5%, and a very attractive payback of 1.3 years. Overall, the PEA was scoped with a 8.3-year mine life, producing around 100,000 ounces per annum at a very favorable strip ratio of 3:1. I certainly haven't seen a better strip ratio across open pit gold projects in Canada. The all-in sustaining cost of $889 an ounce, that's certainly very competitive if you look at other projects, and a very modest capex of 234 million, which includes a 17% contingency of $34 million. While Goldfields is at a PEA level, it's a substantially de-risked asset for a project at that phase. And the reason for that is, in the PEA, we use 99% of indicated resources. Those are resources that are higher confidence category than inferred resources, which are typically used at a PEA stage. So we have greater confidence that the resources are in the ground, which de-risks the project. From a mining and processing standpoint, this is a conventional open pit mining. There's no encroachment into water bodies. It's very competent rock, very little in the way of structure. There's been numerous studies to show, very limited risks from water inflows, from the competent geology, very low strip ratio, as I mentioned. The mineralogy is very simple, allowing us for a standard free milling flow sheet. This is an industry proven conventional flow sheet. And then from the infrastructure and permitting point of view, some very key attributes to the project, including the established infrastructure in the Uranium City area. That includes a road and a power line to site. Uranium City itself has numerous facilities, including bulk fuel, civil contractors. And importantly, Uranium City is a historical mining area. There's a precedent for mining in the area. There's a community that has relied on mining and that understands mining. And those are all positive attributes in terms of taking this forward. So, the environmental and social risks, none have been identified that can't be mitigated in terms of developing this asset. Also, the project has a valid development permit that was granted in 2008. That's for the open pit mining of the box deposit and a milling of 5,000 tonne per day. What's important is that the project has been screened environmentally. It's already got a vast repository of baseline data, and all those are going to be used to, expected to facilitate their timelines toward production, no matter how the project gets scoped further at a PFS level. If we look at Goldfields against peers in the space, and here we're comparing Goldfields to other Canadian open pit gold projects with studies completed mostly in 2022 at similar gold prices, and you can run your eyes down the gold prices on the right. So we feel we can make comparisons in terms of the economics. Firstly, on the grade and production, as an open pit project, our average mill grade is 1.2 gram a ton. That certainly compares very favorably, if not better than a lot of the other junior developers in the space. And from an average annual production point of view, shown by the dot on this top chart, that is certainly competitive in terms of average annual production. Initial capital, as I mentioned, very modest at 234 million, which adds to that quick payback on the project. And then the base case economics, producing a really compelling IRR on our base case of 35%, obviously that moving to around 50% at our upside case of 1950. So a really robust and competitive project amongst peers in Canada. In terms of valuation, I mentioned on the first slide there, $5 per resource ounce. And that's calculated by taking just Fortune Bay's market cap and dividing it by the resource ounces at Goldfields on a US dollar basis. And that's done the same for these other companies with similar type projects in Canada. So although we compare fairly well in terms of the various attributes of the project, our valuation is certainly low and provides, I think, a really attractive buying opportunity for Fortune Bay. And as I mentioned, with, I believe, very limited downside risk. On this graph on the bottom has all the details around the different studies that were done. I'm not going to get into that into any detail here, but it is available on our corporate presentation. We have that existing resource across the categories of around 1.2 million ounces at Goldfields. But outside of that, we do see opportunities to expand those resources. Firstly, at Box and Athona, both those deposits are still open. At Box, we drilled some holes last year and the year before in 2021 outside of the mineral resource, where we saw some really nice long intervals of grades around 1 to 2 gram a ton. But within that, some higher grades of 8, those listed there, 8.7 over 5, 13.22 gram a ton over 8, 2.5 over 8, and 8 over 12. So, and a lot of those intersections, they sit within very discrete structures. And we believe additional drilling could prove continuity of those higher grades, which would be then amenable to underground potential. Obviously, there's also scope to expand that pit. We're not encroaching on the lake, and we've got room to push that hanging wall pit face back. So there's some potential to take out more gold at the Box deposit, as well as explore underground potential. We see that system, it continues, it's open. There's a historical hole between Box and Athona that intersected 3.8 gram a ton over 3 meters, within a mineralized granite, very similar to what we see at Box. So potential to keep expanding the system into the Ixhuatán Peninsula area with possible linkages to Ixhuatán itself. Ixhuatán is open to the south. That does go into the lake. So there'll, economic considerations would need to be taken into account should one want to look at a cofferdam in future. But the resource and the open pit mining is all on land at present. And the Ixhuatán West mine granite offers some potential for expansion. There's been some drilling into that body before, including 3.8 gram a ton over 7.2 meters, but not enough to estimate a resource yet. So that there's additional drilling needed there to add to the Ixhuatán resource. The next advanced prospect is Frontier, where historically there's been some historical underground developments and some encouraging grades around that prospect. Additional drilling is needed where we see it's open, and that could be developed into a resource which would be an open pit target. Outside of Frontier, there are two other regional prospects, Golden Pond and Triangle, both which warrant further exploration work. We've put our heads together on those and developed some areas that warrant follow-up, and as well as like a drilling methodology based on the structural setting of those occurrences. That wraps up Goldfields, and I'll certainly touch on plans for that project at the end. But just moving on to Mexico, to our Ixhuatán asset, and I realize not many people are fully aware of this project or the potential of it. And over the last 6 to 12 months, we've been turning our attention to looking at this in more detail. It's always formed an important pipeline asset for the company, and we feel it's time to start moving this along. It's located in Chiapas state, that's the southern part of Mexico, and it has existing infrastructure, including a highway that runs near the property boundary on the eastern side. There's a rail head nearby, air transportation. It's 100% owned, no royalties or encumbrances. And what I'm going to show you is that the geological setting parallels most of the giant porphyry deposits worldwide, and we see significant potential there. It has the existing resource at Campamento, 1.7 million ounces of gold across the categories. So this slide, it's an image from Google Earth, and just point to a quote from a scientific paper on the right that shows that most of these giant porphyry, copper moly, copper gold systems in the circum-Pacific are related to these plate or oceanic plate seismic ridges, seamount chains, or plateaus that are subducted below the North American and Caribbean plates, so North American, Caribbean, and South American plates. We look at Bingham Canyon. I'm sure most of you know that. That's operated by Kennecott. That's a Rio Tinto company, one of the world's greatest, or if not the world's greatest, copper ore body. And that's related to the subduction of the Mendocino fracture zone. You can see that line shown in Google Earth. That's an aseismic ridge that's being pushed below the North American plate and giving rise to the Bingham Canyon porphyry system. It's exactly what Cook is referring to. Here we see it further to the south, the Carnegie Ridge and the Cocos Ridge oceanic plateaus, again being subducted below the Caribbean and South American plates, giving rise to Sierra Colorado in Panama and Cascabel in Ecuador. And if one scans across the oceanic crust along the western seaboard of North America and looks for other seismic ridges or plateaus, the Tehuantepec Ridge really stands out, and it's the subduction of that ridge below the North American plate that's giving rise to a huge porphyry system sitting below our projects at Ixhuatán. To demonstrate that further, we look at the regional magnetics on the left here for the southern part of Mexico, and at Ixhuatán, a huge bullseye magnetic high indicative of this porphyry system sitting below the project. If we go across to the right here, we see a HeliMag survey which better resolves that large bullseye anomaly into 2 intrusive centers, of which the Ixhuatán tenement, which is shown in black, covers the southern portion of that large intrusive system. It's a big, large body, overall 15 by 10 kilometers, obviously with significant potential and certainly comparable to some of these other systems globally that have produced these world-class copper mines. Shown in white here, we've just interpreted the nearer surface magnetic anomalism, which indicates where that porphyry system sits closer to surface. So you can keep an eye on those white lines as we jump to the next slide. So apart from there being this big porphyry system at depth, what's favorable to this project is that's caused by this subduction of this aseismic ridge that's got more volume, greater volume in terms of oceanic crust, along with more fluids, which are going to give rise to a very favorable porphyry system. The project has these thin cover rocks, which cover the porphyry system, and what's really favorable about those is they're reactive in nature. They're made of limestones and hydrite halite rocks, which have chemical compositions that are going to react and cause precipitation of metals in the area. And we've certainly seen that amongst a lot of the occurrences found to date. So the mineralization to date, which is shown here by these numerous labels at Ixhuatán, a lot of the prospects shown, as well as the Campamento deposit, those are all indicative of the upper portion of a district scale mineralizing system. And we can just see some of the highlights here shown, firstly to the north at Santa Fe, there's been historical copper mining that shows there's a precedent for a copper system here. At Cerro Lamina, under the Kinross option, when our predecessor held the project, a hole was drilled there from surface 600 meters at 0.28% copper, 0.7 gram a ton gold, and 2.7 gram a ton silver. That's around a 0.8% copper equivalent. That's an all-grade hole. That body, it has been explored with other drill holes to an extent, but it's still open to the northwest, where that portion of that breccia pipe hasn't undergone exploration. The other prospects on the property have some tremendous highlights as shown here, but they're all indicative of the system that has lots of huge metal endowment and making a really target-rich environment. In the section on the bottom, you can just see that porphyry system schematically drawn in at depth, and showing between the black lines is the Ixhuatán tenement with that porphyry system daylighting in parts of the property, but otherwise sitting below these thin reactive cover rocks. The copper potential is really exciting from our point of view, given the broader geological setting. What's interesting is previously the project was operated by Linear Gold and Kinross Gold, both gold companies. How exploration was commenced there back in 2004, there was soil sampling done. There was really good soil and gold anomalies, or gold and soil anomalies, commonly over a gram a ton on surface. Those were followed up with drilling and numerous discoveries made, as shown on the previous slide. There's really been no focused copper potential at all on this property, despite these rocks being quite thin in nature and the porphyry system sitting not far below there. If one takes that historical soil sampling grid and looks at the copper, as we've done here, you see numerous copper anomalies on the property, some really nice values in those anomalies, which haven't been tested. They haven't been looked at from a copper perspective, and certainly there's been no deep drilling to drill through these thinner cover sediments to test these porphyry targets. If one looks at companies like Sol Gold with Cascabel, you look at what NGX and Filo are doing, Argentina, Chile, long interceptions of copper, sometimes occurring, blind to surface, but making up significant mineralized bodies that are going to be the future of copper mining. And we feel this is a really attractive proposition to go after these copper targets. Outside of the porphyry potential, obviously there's skarn potential, as well as the Cerro Lamina breccia pipe itself. The plan would be to finish off the soil sampling coverage, get some more detailed coverage of copper that would potentially indicate these leakage anomalies onto surface, as well as combining that with a VTEM survey, including magnetics and radiometrics. That would enable us more detailed mapping of structure, modeling of the thickness of the cover sediments, and looking for signs of alteration where these copper targets could be drilled, tested. One looks at just the schematic. On the bottom right here, we see the intrusive porphyry complex at depth covered by these thin reactive cover rocks, limestones or andesites. Some faulting there, which probably brings in a Horst and Graben setting, bring that porphyry complex closest to surface in places, and the potential leakage of these copper anomalies onto surface. Drilling to date, just schematically indicated by these blue lines, showing that all the testing was testing these gold targets on from surface sampling, shallower drilling into that lithocap zone, but not much deep testing to look at this porphyry system. So Ixhuatán offers numerous multiple opportunities, not forgetting about Campamento, that resource there. There's potential to expand that to the southwest. There's a MMI geochemical survey. That's a type of soil geochemistry survey which shows the anomaly continues to the southwest, and combined with some of the IP that's been done over Campamento shows there's potential continuation of that and would warrant testing. But otherwise, Campamento has a potential to go to a PEA stage with a bit of geotech and metallurgical work to demonstrate the economics of that deposit. It does start from surface, so it would be an open pittable target. Outside of that, there's these other gold zones in the lithocap that have been found previously, but warrant further drilling. Many of those are underexplored, and we're developing some concepts and ideas around expanding some of those zones with a view to building out the gold resource base for the project. And then, of course, the sleeping giant here is this porphyry system. We see it peeking through in these two red mapped outcrops of the porphyry system or subcrops. And it's really that sitting just beneath the skin of these cover sediments that's got us really excited about developing concepts and evaluating that opportunity. So I went down to the project in May there were two reasons. One was to meet with the communities. It was our first visit since I've joined the company in 2020 to the project, and really to get a feel for the landscape there, the communities, and the ability to commence work there again. I must say the welcome received from the communities across the board was very warm and welcoming. It's very clear that our predecessor company, Linear Gold, we still operate under that entity in Mexico, built some very good and strong relationships during their exploration days, 2004 to 2007. And there seems a genuine interest from the communities to have that company back. Obviously, there would be shared benefits from exploration, and to see economic stimulus from investment by a company. So really, that really went well, that visit from that point of view. The other part of the visit was to check our facilities and what state our core and all our equipment is in. And that's all stored in this warehouse shown on the top right. There's a full inventory of all the historical core in there. It's in really good shape, alongside a full suite of exploration equipment, from geophysical survey equipment to surveying equipment, you name it, to carry out the necessary work prior to a drilling stage. And just shown on the right, also had the opportunity to view some of the historical core and pulled out just showing here is the highlight hole Campamento, 100 meters at 12 gram a ton. That was an exciting intersection back in the day when Linear drilled that hole. And Sierra Lamina, the hole I mentioned, with that 600 meters of 0.8% copper equivalent from surface, just showing that copper mineralization in these oxides. That wraps up Mexico. So just to give an overview of where we're at and the plans for our projects. Goldfields is an important development asset for the company. We are intent on moving that forward. It certainly warrants advancement, particularly given the macro picture for gold, which we feel is really positive. We've obviously been talking to various people about the best avenues to move this project forward, and I assure you being really active on that front to work out how we can take it through pre-feas and into feasibility. Part of it is obviously looking to protect shareholders and minimize dilution, but we are looking to get a PFS started and then move that into feasibility next year. So at the moment, it's really looking for those right avenues and talking to people about possible partnerships or sale of or potential sale of the asset. So really looking to move that along, and it remains an important project for us. At Mexico, we've completed our first visit to the project and are planning subsequent visits to move that along. What's required there is the communities do have the surface rights. They're owned by different, what they call ejidos, and it's to establish access agreements to that project so that work can start. Now, Linear Gold did that very successfully in the past, and it's been very clear the relationships are still there. So we do see a pathway to getting those agreements completed and then commence with work next year, starting with that V10 survey, as I mentioned, and completion of the soil sampling coverage with the view to developing drill targets. Of course, partnership would remain an opportunity there for us, not to say if something would happen, but that type of project in that setting, that type of potential with the infrastructure, the major companies are certainly looking for these types of projects against the copper macro backdrop. And so there always is potential to bring in a partner if that's the right decision for shareholders, to move that along with less dilution to our shareholders. And then not forgetting Strike and Mermac, we did have some really promising results from our initial round of drilling. We were targeting a model that hadn't been targeted before in that area, and that's the Athabasca high-grade model. As I mentioned previously, historical work was all focused around these beaver lodge type deposits that occur in granites, and we were the first company to go in there and really chase these graphitic rocks. We proved they were graphitic, we proved there was structure, there was alteration, and we did come up with 5 intersections of greater than 0.1% over 0.1 meter of uranium. So we've shown that they're also fertile. So more work is needed there to follow up on that drilling. And the plan there is, as a company, we're not looking to advance that immediately ourselves. Doing so would incur significant dilution on our existing gold assets. So the sensible step, we believe, is to bring in a partner that would come in under an option or earn-in arrangement to carry Fortune Bay forward and to advance those projects with us retaining upside in a future discovery. And we, as an explorer, we're certainly on the lookout for new assets. We believe we've got a good pipeline, as shown here, from Goldfields to being at more advanced Mexico and then the uranium, but obviously looking for opportunities with a gold focus. Lower cost acquisitions in stable jurisdictions would be the priority for us. So just wrapping up, why invest? We are poised for growth, where we currently sit. And as I mentioned, I believe with limited downside risk, we have that significant gold resource base of around just over 2.9 million ounces. And that's currently valued in our market cap at just $2 an ounce. We've got plans to unlock the value through exploration developments focused on gold, but we see that significant copper potential in Mexico, looking to partner out our uranium assets, which provide us with some upside. Experienced board and management, we're aligned with shareholders, still maintaining around a 15% insider ownership and a tight capital structure, just 43 million shares outstanding. And overall, we believe a highly attractive valuation proposition. Well, thanks very much for listening in. We will make this available on our website should you want to share it or with anyone. Next webinar we will have in October. And if you want to reach out, please do so at any time through our website. There's various channels for that, to book an investor call or ask us a question, and stay subscribed for updates, please. I'm going to turn to the questions. First question: do you think that Ixhuatán will be easier to navigate? Do you think that Ixhuatán will be easier than Goldfields to navigate? Well, Goldfields is obviously in a top jurisdiction. It's in Saskatchewan. That's a top-ranked jurisdiction in Canada. So obviously, it is an easy project to operate amongst the best jurisdictions in the world. Ixhuatán, certainly, it will offer more challenges, but none that we see that can't be mitigated or dealt with. As I mentioned, I think the visit to site was really encouraging. And relative to the potential at Ixhuatán, it certainly warrants, working through that. And so we definitely see a pathway to getting work started again in Ixhuatán. Another question: could you expand further on the project generation side? We've certainly keep our eyes open, and we talk to various people. We do see ourselves as generators as well. We generated the uranium assets, which was something we did, a couple of years ago, and brought those through initial phase of work. So we'll continue to look for other opportunities, as they arise. But for the moment, the focus will be on getting, Goldfields on the right track through a partnership or possible sale of that asset, and then obviously focusing on getting Mexico started. Another question here: in Mexico, how many locations does your project cover, and which ones did you visit? So in terms of locations, I presume that means just different occurrences and some of these prospects. So we drove up to Sierra Lamina and saw the Sierra Lamina and Campamento sites. So we haven't done a deep on-the-ground dive. What we did do was starting to look at some of the drill core, but we've got all the data in good shape. So at this stage, it's working up all these prospects from a conceptual type level, following which we'll be going onto the project, looking at all the historical drill core, and then going onto site to further work. So we're still at the early stages of developing some of those concepts, and certainly details that will be developed over the next 6 months as we prepare for getting work started there again. Another question: sounds like no work has been done at Ixhuatán for a long time. Why has no work been done there for so long if it has a gold resource and other targets? Well, that's a really good question. It really relates to partly history and partly the gold market. So the last time the project was worked was in 2009 under the option by Kinross. And at that time, Linear Gold was forming Brigus Gold, which became a larger company. Brigus Gold acquired had the Black Fox mine in Ontario, and that ultimately got sold to Primero. So, it was really a function of Linear Gold moving to a development or a production stage asset, and focus shifting away from these exploration stage assets, and then Brigus Gold going through that transaction. And when that transaction happened, when Brigus Gold sold to Primero, Primero's interest was that Black Fox mine. And these other assets, Goldfields and Ixhuatán, were then spun out into Fortune Bay in 2014. And if you remember, that was a time when the gold market was in a real lull. And from 2014 until 2020, these assets sat in Fortune Bay, and there was very little work done on them until our team was put together, including me as CEO, where we started to reactivate these assets and start to work them. And the first focus was Goldfields, where we obviously have now brought that to a PEA stage. And it's really now that we see the ability to start to bring Ixhuatán, that has always been a pipeline asset, forward. And it's in some ways long overdue, but in some ways, I believe, really well timed with where we sit with the gold market, as well as the bigger picture for copper. Thanks, everyone. I don't see any more questions, so we'll leave it at that. I appreciate your time, and please, yeah, do give me a shout at any stage if there's any questions. Thanks a lot.